Hey everybody, this is Mr. Ensrud. Happy Cinco de Mayo and welcome back to Raider Time 11. It's been a while. In fact, it's been since before you guys took the ACT or the Accuplacer or the ASVAB a while back. So here we are back for the next to last Raider Time that you'll experience. We've got one in a couple weeks. So as you can see on the screen, I'm going to take you through the slides and then give you some time to work on the materials that we present. So if you could lock in a little bit and try and follow along, we're covering two subtopics within a bigger conversation today. The big conversation is what's next, basically, and what's the timeline and the process for you on that. You'll see and hear that quite a bit of this is going to be geared towards students who are considering going off to college, and you'll see why that is in just a moment. So here we go. If you could keep your eyes on the screen and put your other devices away until we're ready to move into some documents, that would be fantastic. So first on this screen, there's a couple fun facts, and we pulled this data just this last week. It's actually from the class of 2024, so just a couple of years ago, pulled from a state agency that compiles it from all kinds of directions, so it's really as accurate and up to date as we can find. If you look at the little graphic on the left, it is referring to the percentage of high school graduates that go off to college. And if you look where I'm trying to put the cursor, Northfield High School specifically, we have 45% of that graduating class going off to college in Minnesota, and 27% of that class going off to college somewhere outside of Minnesota. And college means any type of college, 2-year, 4-year, tech school, community college, certification program, anything that is a college institution. So add that all up and we're at about 72% of the population, and that's pretty common. We hit a little smaller percentage for the couple of years coming out of the pandemic, but we've been kind of returning back to this 70+% of our students enrolling in college the fall after they graduate high school. Which, if you look to the graphic on the right, talks about percentage of students enrolling in college the fall after graduation, and it breaks it down a little bit further as far as 45% doing a Minnesota Public 4-year, not 45%, 21%, 45 students, 20% doing a Minnesota Public 2-year, Minnesota Private 2-year versus a Minnesota Private 4-year school. So you can see how things are kind of adding up on the right to total out similar to what you see on the left. And you can see that that's 79 students that represent 37% of the kids that are college going. So at any rate, it just gives you a sense of not only the percentage of people that go off to college, but a little bit about where they go within Minnesota versus beyond Minnesota in terms of public versus private in Minnesota. We could pick apart stats and data all the time. We know that there are 25 to 30% of the students who do not enroll in college right after high school. Certainly anywhere from 5 to 10% of those who don't initially enroll do so within 1 to 2 years after they graduate. And then everybody else kind of spreads out in terms of what's next for the rest of our population. We actually see 8 to 10 students take a specific gap year through Rotary and go abroad. So that's not a huge percentage, but there are always a handful that do that. There's some small number of other students that do intentional gap years that are preparing them for their next step. And then we have a lot of students who will go off into the workforce, whether that's with intentionality of this is what I want to do for a long time, or it's I'm not sure what I want to do, so I'm going to work for a bit and kind of figure it out in the year or two after I graduate and then see where that takes me. And then lastly, we certainly also see a handful of students go off into a military branch after they graduate. So there's your fun facts. Now, buckle up. Look at this next screen. It's a 3-pager, and we're certainly not going to cover all 3 pages today. When you guys go into the slide deck after we're done looking at it together, you'll be able to choose your own adventure, really, and find where you are in this timeline and figure out how it can best help you. It's also something we're going to try and push out and advertise with families through the Raider Update so that parents and families can also see kind of some of this timeline and how to work through it in a manageable and navigable fashion. So I'm going to pause from the slide deck, and then we're going to go into a specific portion of the application timeline and process. And again, knowing that not everybody is applying to a 2 or a 4-year college, we do know that even if that's not the case, you're going to be applying for something. In fact, one example that I would highlight right away is for students who are considering a 2-year route, especially in a 2-year technical college pathway. There are some high demand programs out there, and really students who are applying to one of those high demand programs should apply as early, if not earlier, than anybody else in their class, if that's a pathway you're considering. So we'll get into some of those weeds as we get going. But for now, take a look at simply where we are on a calendar. This is the beginning of the document, and you can see if I scroll up or down, we're at the very beginning, and as we work through it, it starts talking about what comes after the school year and into next fall. And then it gets into some very specific things about the college application process and using Naviance to do so. But what we want to do today is really start together and work through some of the things that you see on the screen in front of you right now. Just like the PDF version of this that you'll have access to, I'm going to kind of work through it and toggle back and forth a little bit so that you can see what some of these live links take you to. All right, starting with really returning to the tool that you guys have access to 24/7 all the time. The primary reason we have Naviance is for post-secondary and college planning and any other type of pathway planning. So if you remember what that looks like, please remember that you have your own Naviance account. You can get at it through ClassLink is the easiest way to get there. So Naviance housed in ClassLink. I've got a demo account going here where you can kind of see the home screen where most of you have identified pathways. Most of you will see this screen too that talks about your next task in taking the ACT or SAT, which you did complete recently, many of you. So if I were to click on review details for that item, I can actually go in and enter my test scores. And I'm going to toggle back to this timeline real quick. You will see that we're going to talk about the ACT in just a couple check boxes here. Okay, so we'll come back to that. In Naviance, if you'll notice, once I've identified a path, researching careers and/or schools in Naviance is a really most effective tool. Counselors were at a workshop last week where there was a lot of conversation about AI and a lot of concern from the Minnesota Office of Higher Ed, the people that oversee all the colleges in Minnesota. A lot of concern about how students are increasing their use of AI to do college and career planning, which really only gives you the results that are as specific as the questions you ask. And cited several examples where AI is giving the most popular answers more than the most specific answers suited to what you are looking for. And that can be tricky because some of you know really specifically what you're looking for, and some of you maybe don't. And you might ask things like, well, what's the best college? And that's not going to be a super suited answer for you. So within Naviance, researching careers, schools is a great way to go. And there's a few tools within Naviance that we wanted to review real quick. So under the colleges tab, we really strongly recommend that you use the Supermatch College Search because it's a database of every 2- and 4-year institution in the United States, and it allows you to search by criteria that you control and that you enter, the things that are most important to you. And those criteria across the top, again, are location, academics, admission rates, student life, diversity, other characteristics, cost, athletics, resources, student groups, all kinds of things that you might be getting more comfortable or at least aware of some specifics you might be looking for. And then it'll take you right on through all these different criteria. If you leave them blank, that's fine. And as soon as you add anything, it's giving you a tailored set of results based on what you're looking for. We've seen that before. That was a quick review. Second thing, under colleges, if you are someone who is starting to get into, I've got a list, I've got some colleges going, doing some side-by-side college comparisons might be a wise idea. Diving deeper into scattergrams or other specific facets of each of the colleges you're looking at, acceptance histories, and so on and so forth. So really developing a list of possibilities in Naviance that match what you're looking for, that match your academic profile, that match what you can now add as an ACT score. All those things are things you can take advantage of. All right, so Naviance, check. Internet. If you're going to use the internet, people, again, not AI, take a look at a specific school or a specific program within a school. There are things on websites, if you and your family are worried about cost, there are net price calculators that can give you some estimates of what it might actually cost. There are some really specific pieces of an application process to each school. I got to tell you, you got to know, if you don't already, the application process is unique and specific to each place you apply. You'll hear about things like the Common App, and you'll hear people talking about how it's all pretty similar across schools. And they're the students that aren't getting accepted to all their schools because they did not follow the specific steps on a school's website about that school's application process. So certainly using the internet and using Naviance can go hand in hand. And then absolutely critical if you have opportunity to get out and do some campus visiting. We know we talked about this way back before MEA in October. Well, here we are again on the verge of summer, and you might have a more targeted list of schools you want to look at. There's a link in this handout that walks and talks you through some things to specifically consider when doing campus tours, and things to ask and the importance of them, and all kinds of good stuff about how you can really walk away with not only a good gut feel, which is absolutely a critical part of a campus visit, is it gives you a really good sense of, hey, does this place feel like where I could see myself going for any length of time? But there's lots of specifics that you can look at in this link. Okay, so there's your researching of careers and/or schools. Then back in Naviance, you may have noticed there are places that you can identify your top maybe 3 to 6 or 4 to 8 or 4 to 10. We know the number of schools students are considering and applying to has risen, but if you can manage that process to make it manageable, that would be incredibly wise and efficient for you next year. So the colleges I'm thinking about is an area where you can kind of keep track of colleges that you might be interested in, and you can build a list of what is most interesting to you. I'm trying to walk through a live example here as my Wi-Fi goes pretty weak, so I'm going to just back right on out of that and pretend like it never happened. Okay, back to our timeline. Here's where we're going to pause. This is something we did in March, now 2 months ago, for goodness sakes. Determine a plan for taking the ACT again, if you think that is fitting. I will reference again the workshop I was at last week. There is a return to students taking the ACT at a higher percentage. There is absolutely a trend across colleges. The percentage of students that most mid to more selective colleges, the percentage of those colleges that are admitting students who have submitted an ACT is higher than those students who have not. So there's some advantage absolutely being taken and gained in terms of using test scores for both admission, potentially for student aid, potentially for course placement. So while, yes, we continue to live in a largely test optional landscape, test scores mean something. And really the best way to look at it is if you pulled a solid score, use that to your advantage. If you're not confident in the score you pulled, in fact, if you believe you can do better, you can certainly access your MyACT account. Take a look at June or July or September national test dates and consider signing up to do it again. So that's a little tidbit on test scores that you got back and might want to think about what to do. All right, here we go. Now we're getting into the serious work. The next part of the checklist is this complete student highlight sheet. And I'm going to hop right back over to our slideshow, as that is going to be something that we want to highlight the highlight sheet. So whether you're applying for a part-time or a full-time job next year, you're preparing to apply to colleges or any scholarships in the next 6 to 10 months, this document is going to be the place to start because it's like your resume. Okay, it's a 2-pager. We'll take you on a quick tour of it as far as what you might want to use it for. But those of you that have applied to jobs, you'll see why it might come in handy. Otherwise, I think everyone will see that there's some value in using this document in order to start planning and placing your highlight reel basically from your time in high school. All right, so you can see that specifically up top, it's set up for students who are going to use it to obtain letters of recommendation. But honestly, it's a phenomenal planning tool where you can gather all the things about you, what you're thinking about for the future in terms of education and career goals, what you've done in school and outside of school in terms of activities, whether those are school related or non-school related, volunteer and work category. What have you done in terms of leadership and or employment and or hobbies and interests, things that describe you. Sometimes it's fun to ask a parent, hey, what do you notice? What do you see? What do you think that I might want to consider as I move forward? And then getting into a little bit of a narrative type of thought, something that describes and defines your high school experience. So one of the things that we're going to ask your Raider Time teachers to have you do as soon as I'm done yapping is download this. They've got some hard copies if you go on a hard copy instead. Really, this is your working resume. If you're someone who already has a resume, show it to your Raider Time teacher. Go ahead and prove that you've already done this work, basically, and that would be great. We'll talk about page 2 when we get into the letters of recommendation piece. But one action item that we're going to ask you to get into as soon as we get through a couple more slides is to work on this student highlight sheet. Now, I mentioned page 2. The other category that we want, probably if there are 70 to 75% of you planning to apply to colleges for next year, we would estimate that close to half of that, maybe a little more than half of you, will potentially need letters of recommendation for your college applications. We want to be really careful here. We don't want to assume that you will need letters of recommendation. It's only some schools that require them. And certainly, if you're going to be applying for anything next year for your year after you graduate, if there is not a need for a letter of recommendation, you don't want to take action on this yet. It's not okay. It's not cool to be asking adults for letters of recommendation that you're not sure you're ever going to use. So some of you might be ready for this later. Some of you might be ready for it now. And I know that because last week I got 2 outreaches from, juniors who are asking me for letters of recommendation because they have their college lists going. Okay, so this document, I'm going to flip over to, it's real wordy, people. So if you're not ready to consider actually asking for a letter of rec yet, you're probably not ready for all this content. But it starts with what I was just talking about. Don't assume everybody's going to need one. Also, make sure you've talked to your counselor if you're just not sure about whether you're going to need something like this or not. Reach out sometime in the next few days, even if you want to ask that question, that's fine. It is okay if you are mostly convinced or entirely convinced you're going to need one of these. It's okay to start getting specific right now in thinking about, well, who's going to write me a letter. It's all about who knows you best, who's not family. It's all about most recently. Don't ask somebody from 8th or 9th grade. And don't assume that people are going to write letters for you, okay? It's important that you talk to people in person and individually, or maybe set it up with a nice email to set up a conversation to ask about the possibility of writing a letter. Some schools will package the letter of recommendation as part of your application process and will connect you to how to make those specific requests in Naviance once we get back in the fall. But right now, it would simply be inviting or talking to a teacher about please write a letter sometime between now and maybe in the fall. Some teachers prefer the earlier you ask, the better. Because things get pretty crazy busy once we get going into September, October, November. Okay. Most of our staff members will submit their letters through Naviance, but they can't yet. So that's part of the conversation right now, is that you can talk about writing a letter, hanging on to it until you can give more details in the fall. Okay. There's some info about if you actually have to send a postal version of this or a hard copy. This bullet point talks about one of the main reasons we had you looking at that student highlight sheet is if you ask anyone for a letter of rec, using that student highlight sheet is essential. In fact, page 2 of that student highlight sheet gets really specific to giving teachers some specific context and items to be able to speak to if they can write you a letter. So, talked about giving them plenty of time in advance, and that's why we're mentioning this right now. If you wait until too late, recommenders might say, I just don't have time, and sorry, and that's going to add to your stress level. So planning ahead is great. Absolutely, like most of this conversation today, check in, talk to your counselor in the next few weeks if you have questions about the student highlight sheet, letters of recommendation, anything that you're seeing in today's info. Okay? All right, so there we are on this item, which brings us to our last slide, and simply here's what you're going to work on as soon as I sign off. Find that student highlight sheet. Want a hard copy? Ask the teacher your rater time. Want to grab it off of today's slide deck? Go ahead and do that. That should be in your rater time course in Schoology. If you're ready to start thinking about or looking at specifics for letters of recommendation, have it that checklist and dive into that a little deeper. But that's kind of the spiel for now. I decided it would be more appropriate if I ran through it with you before turning you loose on working on any of it. So again, reach out to your counselor with questions. Talk to your rater time teacher if you want to figure out how to find this stuff. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.